Good morning, it is 10 past 2 and coffee break time again here in the office at work. We are still in lockdown, which means that all the videos that I had planned and had on the slate, anything involving commentary or gameplay or anything like that, is going to have to wait. Hopefully not too long, but it's just until the kids are back at school. In the meantime, what I've been doing is small little projects that I can do on my lunch break and in my coffee break at work. Things like the controllers that I've built and the controllers that I've painted and all the other stuff. I tend to do that here at work because it doesn't take long. It's fairly simple. So what I want to do is a project that I have basically been waiting for the parts to come in, but it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time now. Back in 2002, maybe early 2002, late 2001. So let's say the beginning of 2002. My girlfriend, who is now my wife, and our 6-month-old baby were living together in a small flat in Bethnal Green. We were both working, and as far as entertainment goes in the house, we had a fairly beat up second-hand Sony CRT. We had hi-fi, like a radio. We had a VHS player with about 6 cassettes, and we had my PS1. That was it. We had no computer, we had no DVD player, nothing. And then, literally out of nowhere, my wife surprised me with a PS2. And that was everything to me at that point. It was so cool. It's still one of the coolest things that she's ever got me. Purely because of the circumstances we were in. Anyway, I still have that PS2, and I still use that PS2. But unfortunately, what you know a PS2 to look like the original big black slab monolith PS2, what you assume that those look like and what those look like at the time, mine does not look like that now. All these years later, nearly 18 years later, it doesn't look like that. What it looks like is, unfortunately, this. So, as you can see, this hasn't been used as much as it's been abused. But that's not to say I didn't love this thing. Like, I absolutely adore the PS2. And this has had thousands of hours go through it. This thing, to be honest, the fact that it still runs is a miracle. But, and again, I did love this machine. I know it looks like I've treated it like dirt, and to a certain extent I have. But let me just explain the sort of life that this thing has had very briefly. So this is an original launch PS2. The front bezel has gone. I removed that because this machine was the very first time that I discovered modding, but not sort of hardware modding. It was a case of, what can I get this thing to do that it's not supposed to do?
You're right, it's future me here. Future me is editing what you're watching now. I thought I'd just quickly elaborate on that last statement about getting the PS2 to do things that it wasn't meant to do. Specifically, what I'm talking about is this. This is the Action Replay Max from Code Junkies. Now, if you lived in the UK or Europe, we didn't really have Game Genie here. We had it like back in the late 80s, but what we had over here was Action Replay or Game Shark. Action Replay was really, really cool because they weren't just cheats, although that's also what they did. What the Action Replay, and specifically the Action Replay Max for the PlayStation, and I think the GameCube as well, what that did was let you sort of like muck around with other things, specifically. As well as giving you like infinite lives and unlocking all the stuff in the games, it could also open like debug menus. So I know Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, I had all the developer debug stuff unlocked, and you did it once, saved it to the memory card, and it was done. I know that for Time Splitters 2, it allows you to run it in 60 frames a second. Like, if you're in the States, you never had this issue, but in Europe, if you put in a PAL game, the very first thing this game will ask you when you put it in is, do you want to run this game in 50 Hz or 60 Hz? Not every game does that. Time Splitters 2 is one of those games that didn't, so this allowed you to run it in 60 Hz. And if you wanted to update anything as well, this also had network access, so you could hook it up to the internet via your PS2 and completely update everything. It was really, really cool. The other thing that the Action Replay Max did was it came with this other disc. Now, this other disc, if you look here, it says, burn MP3s, games, and more straight to CDR for playing through your PS2. And it says movies, music, and games. So the movies and music is fairly self-explanatory. MP3s and I think .movs. The bit that I want to draw your attention to is here where it says games. And what you imagine is that this is for piracy, and to a certain extent it was. You could burn CDRs in there, but the other thing you could burn is something called PGen. Now, PGen is a PlayStation Genesis / Mega Drive emulator, which I have burnt onto here. So this is PGen, the emulator, burnt onto here with 400 Mega Drive ROMs. So what this allowed me to do was to swap the discs, essentially. So put this in, then load up basically almost like a shell, and then put any CDR in, and it would find the first thing that was burnt onto that CDR and then execute it. So for this disk, it was PGen. So you put in this disk, then swap the disks, put in this, it would execute PGen, and then it would have 400 ROMs. So what I had was, and again, this is way back, like I had a really, and this is, I think this is while Sega was still not multi-console yet. I think they were still sort of doing their own thing, but I had basically like the Mega Drive's greatest hits on my PlayStation, and it had things like quick save and quick load and all of that other stuff. It was super, super cool and really early. I know you had this kind of stuff on PC, but this just didn't exist on console yet, unless you bought like a game and it had like an emulated version of an old classic game on it, which again, the PlayStation 2 was kind of like the first sort of wave of that, really. You never, I mean, other than the Namco collections on the PS1, you never really saw that kind of thing as like a bonus. You only saw it as like a dedicated collection. But this, you never got anything like this. There's 400 ROMs, like Mega Drive ROMs, ready to go to play on your PlayStation. And all you needed was this disc and this disc in your PC. Like, once that was done, you could basically lose that, put in that, swap it with that, and you had 400 Mega Drive games. And that's when I first realized, oh, just because it says PlayStation on the outside and just because you can buy PlayStation games doesn't need to stop there. This thing can do way more than that, and it was because of this that I found that out. Alright, cool. Back to the video.
Which boiled down to me removing the front bezel. And I don't know if you remember at the time, you could get an old credit card or an old card and cut it in certain ways, like cut certain things out. And if you slid that in the front, pulled it up, and then yanked it out, you could pull out the drawer without pressing the eject button to swap discs and whatnot. So I was doing that with it, but I also needed to slow down the discs. So what I did was I took, again, this is 2002, maybe 2003 at this point. I didn't have any tools, because again, we didn't really have much back then. So when I say I drilled a hole in the top chassis here, not so much drilled as much as went at it with a screwdriver and a pair of kitchen scissors. So there is a hole smashed in the top around here. And the reason I smashed a hole in the top is so I could push my finger, very dangerous, I could push my finger in, touch the white spindle on top of the thing and slow down the disc so that I could then yank the disc out and swap discs. In hindsight, incredibly dangerous, but that's what I was doing. So I did that to it. The front bezel was long since been lost, and to cover it up, what I've done is I've put a Guns N' Roses sticker over the hole, and then put electrical tape quite poorly around it. In 2002, Guns N' Roses hadn't been a band for like 7 years, but whatever. I was probably got these, and like let's turn it up to 11 sticker. I probably got these off of like Krang or Rock Sound, the magazines I was reading at the time, and just decided to patch up the holes that I belted into it with those. I had the network adapter on the back. Now this network adapter probably saw about as much use as the actual machine. When Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 and Tony Hawk's Underground 1 came out, I probably put 100 hours into that game on this machine online. Playing with other people, sharing levels, hosting levels, because you could open up a room, they called it a room, and load your own level in. So if you wanted people to play your level, you didn't have to wait for them to download it and play it, which they could. You could just host a room and then load up your own level. And you could load up your own goals, and you could load up your own, not missions, but like little bits of text and stuff. It was super, super cool. Burnout 3 as well, played a lot of that online. Really, really, really hammered the online on this. Twisted Metal Black as well, even though we had the European version, which was heavily censored. Still played a ton of that. So basically this thing, I know it looks like it's been abused, and to a certain extent it has, but it's well loved. And what I wanted to do was make amends for the utter shambles of a state this thing is in at the minute. So what I've been doing is been going on eBay and going on Amazon and buying replacement parts, but not just any replacement parts. We are going to not just repair this machine, because I've got this fascination with putting things back to stock. I thought, well, why? Because the only person that's ever going to use this is me. So why put it back to stock? So I started buying little bits and pieces to replace. So when I popped open the top of the chassis originally, these buttons at the front, this power button and this eject button, come on this tiny little thin little ribbon cable with I think about like 7 little strands of copper in it. Very, very flimsy thing, and that wraps from the top. It goes around and then underneath. I severed that when I put it back together. And again, because I didn't know what I was doing, I stuck it back. I sort of like scratched it off so you could like see the metal, looped it onto itself, and stuck it with masking tape, I think. So we've got that issue. So what I did was I went onto eBay and bought a replacement power supply stroke eject button. Coincidentally, the only way to turn this thing on is switch it on at the back and then hit the eject button twice to turn it on. The power button doesn't work. The light works, but the actual button itself doesn't work. So, originally I bought that because I was like, maybe I'll just fix that. And then I was like, well, why stop there? Like, why stop there? So I also bought a front bezel. And this, what I should have done, was buy another PS2, like a 41, and just replace the parts on it, but I didn't. What I did was I went and bought individual parts for a reason I'm going to say in a second. So, for my PlayStation 2, the pink PS2, the one I built the wireless controllers for, what I did with that was I installed one of these, which is a PS2 to HDMI adapter, and it is literally just a cheap Chinese, let's get it out, a little cheap Chinese little dongle. One end goes in the PS2, one end an HDMI comes out, and goes in. And I thought, well, consider this has no screws, and it probably, I mean, looking at it, I think it's got like a dozen pins on here, which touch a dozen pins in there. How hard could it be to crack this thing open and install this inside the machine? Like, these things are pretty hollow, right? So I'm thinking, well, instead of this multi-out here, which is this Sony proprietary multi-out, What if it just had an HDMI out? So that's another thing I'm going to do. So just as a quick tally, we're going to fix the front here, fix the power cable with this new ribbon, install a new front bezel, and make it HDMI. But again, didn't stop there. What I then thought was, well, we have a massive recess here. For those that don't know, all of this bit here on the PS2 is hollow. Nothing in there. And the reason it's hollow is because you could put an IDE hard drive in there. Now, the IDE hard drive was designed for a couple of reasons. One was a Linux development kit, which was awesome, but I never managed to get a hold of, which came with, I think, a black keyboard, a hard drive, a special memory card, and whatnot. So that was awesome. And also RPGs, like I think Phantasy Star and a couple of other little bits and pieces. Final Fantasy, you needed the hard drive for. So, considering all that space in there is empty, why don't I, and I have the adapter on the back, which the hard drive doesn't actually attach to the PS2, it attaches to the network adapter, which then attaches to the PS2. Quite strangely. So I thought, well, why don't I put in a hard drive? Maybe I can boot the games off the hard drive. It seemed like when I Googled it, it seemed like it wasn't that difficult. Well, relatively wasn't that difficult. So I have a 200 gig SATA hard drive. Problem is, the PlayStation 2 adapter on the back isn't SATA, it's IDE. So again, hit up eBay, and I was like, well, what do? Do I buy an IDE hard drive, or do I try and find some kind of SATA to IDE converter? SATA to IDE converters are super cheap and super easy to get hold of. Why didn't I just get an IDE drive? They're the same shape, they're the same size. They're quite low capacity IDE hard drives. The highest one within my price range I could find was around about 60 gig, whereas this was 200 and I had it sitting in the back of a drawer, just sat there. So I figured I could get a 60 gig IDE drive, or I could just spend a couple of quid on one of these and whack in a 200 gig SATA drive. So what I'm going to have to do is take the adapter on the back apart, kind of fit this in, or this one. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to use. I've got this little green SATA to IDE, but I'm having trouble connecting that to an IDE drive. Or I've got this, it looks like it's a specific one. It's a SATA adapter for PS2 FAT version 2.0. So I'll install that into the network adapter and then put that on. So to recap, new power buttons. We're going to have a 200 gig SATA hard drive in it, and it's going to have HDMI. The last two things it's going to have is, this is the wireless controller. So the wireless controller, this was the part of a double pack. The other half of the double pack is inside the pink controller, which I built. Like completely modded a pink controller with this inside. The other half of this double pack, I'm thinking of putting it in here, so it'll have wireless controllers, it'll have HDMI out, it'll have a 200 gig hard drive, and it'll have new power buttons and a new front bezel. So all of a sudden we're sort of getting quite close to pimping this thing out completely. And then I sort of ummed and ahed and thought, well, we've done so much to the inside of this thing, but it should foundationally be sound. But to truly give back to a machine that has given me so much joy for many, many years now, I think it's only fit and proper that I replace the top. So what I've done is I've bought another upper. The lower is mostly fine, but this upper, as well as the hole punched into it, it's got a burn mark there, which I'm not even going to question, stickers, scratches, dings and whatnot. What I did was I found a guy on eBay selling new old stock. So new old stock is replacement parts that came from the factory, which were never intended to be like on the line, built into a machine, which were essentially, if you sent your machine back in to be repaired, they would repair it with genuine stock, but essentially spare. So I contacted this guy who sent me this. Now, this is disgusting. Truly disgusting. It is in a box which is as old as time, and inside is a brand new, never been used PS2 lid. However, it's really hard to tell this upper has ever been used, because it looks like a mouse got into it while it was sitting in a warehouse and then died. So, as well as the lifespan of this PS2, I have now the lifespan of a small rodent and maybe bits of rodent in here. So I think what I'm going to do first is the same thing that I would have to do with this. This whole project is going to take a while. But the thing that's going to take the most is this. And the reason is that when I have cleaned this, clearly, I'm going to do maybe the most elaborate paint job I've ever done. I am going to fill this section here that says PlayStation 2 with some kind of filler, sand it down, and then I have designed a paint job for it. And it's one of the ones that I'm going to have to stencil and then do 2 passes for. So the first pass will be white. This whole thing is just going to be sprayed gloss white, and the lower as well, and the network adapter, all gloss white. Then I'm going to put on the stencil, like stick the stencil on, which is a stencil that I've designed very quick. I've done a very quick mock-up sketch of what I would like it to look like. It's going to be big. It's going to be big and along the front. And then I am going to use the remainder of the can, because it's pretty much a full can, of the Crimson Red. Now, this Crimson Red I bought for the Joker Harley Quinn Xbox controller that I just did very recently. So what I'm going to do is a white pass, then a stencil, then a red pass, then pull off the stencil, and you'll have white detailing on there. Because I quite like the bold red and white. I mean, loads of people use the red and white, like the PS4 Spider-Man red and white, obviously Coca-Cola, things like that. So it should look good. And then, once that's done, I might also spray the memory card and the controller as well. Just a quick red pass. So, to recap, we are going to completely strip down and rebuild the PS2 with HDMI, a 200 gig SATA hard drive, working power buttons, wireless controllers, and it's all going to be sprayed red and detailed white, and hopefully it should be a brand new classic nostalgic machine. And my nostalgic machine. I'm not replacing it with another one that I've bought. This is mine, and the hours that have been put through this, I put them through, which is why I want to do it. And it doesn't feel like I'm, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like the old joke of like, this is, like this broom has had, 4 heads and 3 handles. It is going to be inside essentially the same bit. Therein lies the last problem. The one thing I'm going to have to do, and this is part 1 of this project, is clean it. Inside this machine is filthy. Like, not just dirty, like filthy. The outside is a very clear, indicative statement of what the inside looks like. It's bad. So what I think I'm going to do today, like day 1 of this project, is take apart all the plastic stuff around here. I mean, as well as cleaning this Chinese new old stock, which is, rodent graveyard. What I'm going to have to do is take this apart, obviously peel off all the Guns N' Roses stickers and the all the other bits and pieces on it, peel off the serial stickers on the back, anything plastic, essentially, the fan, the lot, take it all apart, and then I might go up to one of the wards upstairs. We've got a disused ward upstairs. Go in there, run a bath, fill it full of soapy water, or we got like large sinks. Fill that up, put in a load of soapy water, and just let that sit there for a while. I mean, I don't think there's any metallic parts in the thing. Maybe they're hinges for the memory card bits and pieces, but whatever. So I'm going to wash that, wash the lower, wash the serial adapter, get it all sparkly clean, like really, really clean. Then I think it's going to be a case of taking apart the inside and cleaning that. And for that, I'm going to need to use isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to need to use air duster. I'm going to need to use cotton wool buds and stuff like that, because there is some kind of residue on the inside. I don't even know what fluids have gone into that machine, but it's bad. So that's job number one. And then I think job number two would be the HDMI. Somehow getting that installed. I'm probably going to have to desolder the multi out and solder in the inside of whatever's in here, because these are just cheap. You know what I mean? They're really, really cheap plastic cases are wrapped around very, very, very quickly soldered cheap components. So that shouldn't be an issue. Then it's going to be the hard drive. Then it's going to be then it's going to be the hard drive and the SATA drive and the network drive, getting all that together. Once all of that is done, then it's going to be a case of stenciling and painting, and that's probably the bit that's going to take the most time. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. I'm going to show some love to something that has really, really, really done its, duty, and really, really, really has put in the hours. This thing really, really has been a soldier, and I think it's only right that I pay it back by not only just restoring it, but not stopping there. I'm not going to restore it. I'm going to make it better, and I think it's going to look better, it's going to work better, and it's going to be far more functional. And because I use it all the time, why not celebrate it? Anyway, that's what I'm up to. Job number one, clean it. Peace.